Welcome back to Passive Income Pilots, everyone. Tait, Duryea, and Ryan Gibson here for another week of real estate this week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that I like to say all the time is your network is your net worth.
Absolutely.
And today we're going to put that on display. Matthew is a guy that I met networking at a real estate conference, and we invited him to come on the show to talk about all the things about property management. And I got to be honest, as the episode went on, I got more and more excited. I was like, wow, like I've never thought about property management this way until we talked to Matthew. So this is awesome.
Completely agree. You know, we talk all the time about institutional quality management at the commercial real estate level. We never talk about it at the single family home level or duplex or triplex or quad or even small multifamily, right? So really cool what Matthew has done over his career. You know, he started with 30 single family homes, grew that to 20,000 doors that they manage at his company, which he founded, which is a property management firm that's fully integrated, takes institutional quality property management down to the single family home level. And really cool to see what's involved in that. Even if you're not interested in, hiring a third-party property manager, there are a lot of things that you can take away for your own business. Or if you don't own any single family, maybe this is the turning point where you say, hey, this might take some of the pain out of it. So maybe it's something you want to consider. But they do long-term rental, to be clear. And the company is called Evernest.
Yep. And I think what's also cool, is yes, you want the institutional, you want the better management, you want these things. But then you have this thing called AI, which you pour the gasoline on property management, because now these bigger companies can adopt better AI, better implementation across their portfolio. And it's awesome to see how those efficiencies are playing out in real estate, which is going to make this even more of an attractive investment over time. So we get into that towards the end. But with that, let's get to the show. Let's get to it.
Welcome to Passive Income Pilots, where pilots upgrade their money. This is the definitive source for personal finance and investment tactics for aviators. We interview world-renowned experts and share these lessons with the flying community. So if you're ready for practical knowledge and insights, let's roll.
Well, Matt, we really enjoyed having you join us today. Before the show, we were really kind of trying to dial in, what we really want to get into. And, Matthew and I met at a real estate conference in Florida.
We did.
And I think this is so important, for our listeners to know that, kind of how you learn and you network and you grow your business or you grow your investing portfolio is you got to get out there and network. And I think, meeting at that real estate conference is, kind of attributed to this, right? Where we're connecting and now we're going to share knowledge about what you do in your business. But Matthew, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I got into real estate right after college. I actually got out of college and got a job and woke up every morning just absolutely hating life and hating my job. And on nights and weekends, I started buying single family residential houses. I had a home equity line of credit. I was able to buy a house, and I was doing the work physically on nights and weekends myself. And so I did that. I bought my first house when I was 22 or 23.
Hey,
and scaled that business and started got it to the point where I did over 100 deals between 2003 and 2008.
Wow.
And if anybody was around real estate in 2008, the rest of this story. The market crashed in 2008 and I owned 30 homes that I couldn't sell. So I stuck residents in them. And after telling everybody I was never going to be a real estate agent or a property manager, became both. And so started managing 30 homes that I own. I had a buddy that that owned 25 rentals, some kind of like in a similar situation. He gave me his doors to manage. And then, I started with 55 homes.
You said you started this with a HELOC. And I know a lot of listeners know what a HELOC is, but can you kind of just explain what that is and kind of how that worked and why you got it and got in that position?
Yeah, and there's probably a lot of people that are actually in this position now as real estate, especially homes have appreciated. Even with high interest rates, homes have appreciated. for the last, 8 to 10 years. So a lot of people probably bought houses where they have equity in their house. And you can go to the bank and say, I'm not going to get rid of my first loan, which is probably at 2.5%, 3% right now. But you can get a second loan, which is called a home equity line of credit, HELOC, and you can use that to do things like invest.
Yeah. And so you did that on your primary residence.
I did.
You took out that HELOC and then you bought your first rental with it.
Yeah. And I was 23 years old. So you don't have to know what you're doing to get started.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Now, this might be in contrary to some philosophies that I think we've all flown with. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, hey, I'm almost done paying off my house. I'm so excited. I'm almost debt free. And you're saying that you went the opposite direction. And I'm speaking in hyperboles here because I do the same thing. But it always shocks me when I hear someone say, oh, I'm almost done paying off my house. And I'm like, what's your interest rate? And they say 3.5%. And I'm like, oh boy. Okay. So you're basically investing your money at 3.5% and killing your liquidity. And so do you want to unpack that? Why would someone want to lever up their home rather than pay it down?
Yeah, the first thing when somebody tells me their home mortgage is 3.5%, I think of that as almost free money. So the last thing I would want to do is pay that house off. You also get a deduction on your taxes for the 3.5% you are paying up to a certain amount. So that just makes absolutely no sense in my mind. Now, some people, it gives them peace of mind, and there is value in that. So it makes a lot of sense that somebody would want to pay it off and just, hey, I don't have a mortgage. If everything, went to heck, I could still, I still have a house to live in. So there is a peace of mind thing. But for me, it was like, hey, I'm going to keep that 3.5% mortgage and I'm going to go add leverage onto my house. And if you think about it, if I'm buying another house if I'm buying an asset with it, it makes more sense than if I go out and buy a boat that's going to depreciate. Like that's one thing. And that's what banks would tell you to do, buy a boat, buy a car with it. But I was buying another appreciating asset and I was going to add more value with that same capital. So I saw it as having it was like one of the most secure things I could do. Now, look, it is risky. It does carry risk with it. But anytime you go out and do something like that, it's going to carry some inherent risk. But at the end of the day, I just said, if I buy that with enough margin for error, then I can always sell it for what I have in it. So what is the risk that I've spent some time fixing up a house? And so, especially at 23, maybe other people are in a different part of their life, but I do some of these things today and I'm 45.
Right.
Yeah. And just to be clear, you took the HELOC out of your primary, you used that money as a down payment for the next house and then also took a loan?
No, I used the entire HELOC to buy these houses. Okay. So, this was when real estate in Alabama is relatively cheap. So, with, I think, I can't remember how much it was, probably $70,000 HELOC, I could buy a house and fix it up in 2003 with that same money. So I never had to take out any other loans with the bank.
That's great.
You can, though, for the record, you can leverage a HELOC for your down payment and then go to the bank for another 70 or 80% of a purchase price. So you can essentially leapfrog from one property to the next. And if you're adding value and you leave yourself enough margin of safety to continue paying the debt service, that's the key, continue paying the debt service, then you're good. In fact, I wrote a blog article on this. It's on our website on Turbine Cap, is why you shouldn't pay off your house. And people think, okay, it's a more secure thing to do. It's a safer thing to do. I feel more secure because I own my home. Well, guess what? You still owe property taxes. Keep that in mind. Because if you don't pay your property taxes, the government will take it away from you, even if it's paid off. And let's say you've got $1 million mortgage and you've been paying early mortgage payments for years, right? Giving the bank, double, triple what you owe every month. And you get that principal payment all the way down, to, let's say, $300,000. And then let's say you lose your medical and you go out on leave and you're having trouble paying those mortgage payments. And you call up the bank and you say, hey, Mr. Banker, I know that I've been paying early for all these years. I basically gave you way more than what I owed you. Can I skate for maybe 6 months? You know what they're going to tell you? Absolutely not.
No way.
Nope. And if you're more than 90 days delinquent, we're going to start the foreclosure process. So is it really more secure to be paying all of this money into a one-way account, right? It's not like a line of credit where you can pay it down and then draw it back out. Once it's in, you can't draw that cash back out to generate liquidity. You have to go out and find an additional loan to leverage that equity. So anyway, my point is that I think that it's a little bit of a fallacy. It's a little bit of an unsophisticated view to think that paying down your mortgage is a safer bet.
Yeah, when I think about this, I think about the lowest common denominator. And if you were giving advice to America, in general, it makes sense to tell them to pay off their mortgage and kind of like live safely and securely. But for a lot of people, like it just makes no sense to be paying down a 3% mortgage that you also get a tax break with, and use that capital to do something else. I mean, if you just stuck it in the stock market, it would do better than 3%.
Exactly.
So, that's that you have an arbitrage just with the general stock market.
Now, Matthew,
I just want to hit one more thing on this, and
Sure.
and that's for maybe the pilot that's not actively paying down their mortgage. They're like, yeah, I get that. I'm not going to make extra payments. But there's probably a lot of people sitting there who have this untapped bank of equity in all of these properties, either primary residences, second homes, investment properties, that is there to be tapped as long as you're careful and you invest wisely with it. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that in terms of maybe like evaluating your current portfolio to see what kind of equity you could tap to go invest and buy more property with?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's goals are different. I know a lot of investors that have bought 20 houses and their goal is to just pay those off and then let the cash flow come in.
Right.
And, we can talk about 1031 and, what it makes sense from a depreciation standpoint. But I have seen a lot of people get really rich with the snowball of taking their cash flow, investing it into another property, into another cash flowing property. And that compounding is just really powerful. So, what I would say is, again, it depends on where you are in your investing career. If I'm a young guy, if I was 25 and doing it all over again, I would be reinvesting all that cash flow. The other thing that's interesting that I've seen over the years is people forget how powerful, and I know you guys don't anymore, but people forget how powerful a day job is too.
Oh yeah.
As soon as you start living off your real estate portfolio, it's just amazing how fast that money goes. And so, I've talked to a lot of people that want to be financially free and not have to go to, your audience would be, fly and, be beholden to wherever they send you when they want to send you. But that is a very powerful thing. And when you turn it off, I guess you can go get another pilot job these days, but it's just I would say be patient and just allow that snowball to really to take hold and, maybe even allow it to build longer than you think you should, just to make sure.
I think the good news with our audience is that most pilots actually kind of like their jobs. And even if you don't, you probably would like it a whole lot more if you only had to fly 50 hours a month versus the 90 that you're flying now. So I think that most people want to build a passive income stream so that they can supplement and eventually eclipse their pilot pay, right? I don't think a ton of pilots are just like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. And I got to retire the first moment I get the chance.
But people forget the reality of what happens in our industry, which is you're screaming along with all these retirees. You have this amazing job and you're getting great pay. Then what happens? COVID or GFC or furlough or pick a thing. And all of a sudden you don't have a job and you're stressed. And now this is where your rental portfolio kicks in. This is exactly what happened to me. When COVID hit, I was overjoyed because I had an anti-fragile portfolio. My portfolio actually got better during COVID because rents went up and escalated and things like that. When I was facing a furlough, right? I guess they just called it UNA or whatever it was. But, you lost your job. And I remember people were scrambling, getting their commercial driver's license and driving Uber and doing DoorDash. Like these are things that you should be prepared for. So But I wanted to transition back to Matthew and his story because we went on a little bit of a sidecar, which is fine.
Definitely.
That's good.
It was a good sidecar. So you've taken that one primary, took the HELOC, started buying properties when you're super young. Where are you today? What kind of a portfolio have you amassed, and kind of what do you do day to day now with real estate?
So here's what's interesting. I went from being an investor to being a property manager and continuing to build my portfolio to, I don't know if y'all remember, but back in 2013, well, it started about 2010, but 2010 through 2022, there were a lot of institutional home buyers that were buying houses. And I developed some relationships with some of those. So I actually sold my whole rental portfolio to them. I just felt like they were paying more than what I thought they were worth at the time. And what I did was I reinvested it in the service business. So today, Evernest manages about 20,000 homes across the U.S. We're in 50 different markets, everywhere from where you are, Ryan, in Seattle, all the way through California, Texas, the Smile State, Sunshine States, Florida, and started here in Alabama, back up to, call it Charlotte, North Carolina, Virginia. So we manage single-family homes and small multifamily buildings and have about 550 employees. And so it's become quite an operation over the last decade.
20,000 homes.
That's
wow,
amazing.
But that's a few. So,
property management, yeah. And this kind of brings us to the crux of the conversation today, which is property management. I'm really excited about this conversation because we haven't really dug into property management on this show yet. We talk a lot about real estate, talk a lot about investing actively and passively, but one of the hardest things to do is when you're investing actively in real estate is be a landlord, to manage the property, to do the property management. So you have a firm, obviously, that handles this for people, and we'd love to share how they can get involved with you and use your services towards the end. But to get there, I'd really love to break down what is property management from A to Z. When you're buying a single family home, what do you need to be thinking of in terms of tenant deposits, and how do you find tenants? So let's start from the very beginning. Let's start with property management. What is property management and why is it so important?
Yeah. So the way I think about this is, when somebody gets to investing in real estate, the dream is that you walk out to your mailbox and you get a check. Now, I can't do that for everybody, but that's like the dream, right? What we do as a property manager is we allow the investor to, and we actually have agents across the U.S. that are helping investors buy more and more houses or apartment buildings. But in general, what we do is we take over all the operations of the building or the house. So once you buy it, you would hand it over to us. We have we have renovations teams that are renovating these houses and getting them rent ready. Then we'll lease the home, underwrite the resident. One interesting thing about underwriting right now, there's just a lot of fraud that's happening right now. In Atlanta, 1 in 6 applications we get is fraudulent.
Wow.
So you can just imagine all the fraud that's going on. But
so people applying to rent the house that's actually from Nigeria, and it's a scammer trying to.
Yeah, they're not from Nigeria, but basically a resident, somebody that's trying to fool you can go online and get a full packet of pay stubs and offer letters and make it appear that they make more money than they actually do. And so we have all sort of technology that's underwriting these pay stubs to see if it's a fraudulent pay stub. But my point is, if that's all we did, that would be just made sure that the right people went in the homes.
Right.
That would be, well worth the money we make. But then once the resident moves in, we kind of have a concierge service to help them move in. We collect the rent, disperse the rent to the owner. And then obviously if something breaks, one of the unique things about Evernest is we have our own maintenance company. So generally, a W-2 Evernest employee is going to fix things. When the toilet breaks or air conditioner breaks, in most markets, a W-2 technician is going to fix that.
Amazing.
Yeah. I also I've had property management companies sort of manage my rental portfolio. And, one of the things that comes up is maintenance, things that break on the property. And I've seen it done a couple different ways. I've seen it to where you have somebody internally that comes and fixes my property. And I've seen it where the property management company is going to call the service provider externally and have them come and just pass the bill along to me. Which is better?
Yeah, so we think a W-2 maintenance technician is better. I mean, it's probably about half of our work orders are handled by Evernest employee. We think that that's better because the resident gets a better experience, right? You have an Evernest employee going out there. That feels good to have somebody you kind of like recognize going out there. What we tell our technicians is, look, you're not just fixing the problem, like you're trying to make the resident happy. So we're able to go out there, and if they, fix the toilet in 45 minutes and have a little bit of extra time, maybe they can tighten a cabinet or make sure a door's not sticking shut. So, we feel like that's, keeps tenants in there much longer. Now look, the other 50% we do contract out. And so we do have vendors that are consistently going out to these homes. What we have found is that Evernest work orders are consistently cheaper than third parties, because you can imagine the third parties having to make their cut. They're not at retail, but maybe they're at a wholesale. But because we don't have to market, we don't have to do a bunch of other things that they have to do, we can simply charge our owners less.
Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, pilots love how the fuel molecules work in every part of an airplane and how the things glues together.
Right.
And I appreciate y'all for that.
Yeah, thank you. So that maintenance guy that you have, I mean, you have him on your full-time salary, you have them on your full-time payroll. And so you have to basically bill a certain amount of money to the repair that they're doing. And I would imagine businesses are in the business of making a profit. Like there is probably a little bit of profit for your company in that, right? Is that right? Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if the way we think about it and the way most of the industry thinks about it is very similarly. We make most of the industry will basically take whatever they pay their W-2 technician and then triple that. And that's the kind of the retail version of that. Where that comes from, though, is that you obviously pay a third to the technician. A third goes to kind of the overhead. Think gas, think like employee benefits, everything that goes along with that, corporate overhead. And then a third of that is profit. What's unique about us is we just, because of the amount of work orders we just get technicians at a much better deal because we have more consistent work. And so when an investor is looking at our work orders, we actually have I mentioned a bunch of institutional investors, and they're like pleading with us to send Evernest technicians out to their house because, we're just simply cheaper than our competitors.
You mentioned you don't do 50% of it. What would you say is kind of the most common things that you're going to do in most markets?
Yeah, and really it's a density problem where we have enough work orders, then we're going to hire somebody to do that. But the way we think about it is first thing is just general handyman stuff. So this is fixing easy toilet stuff, soffit and fascia work, doors, broken windows, what you would call a general handyman for. The second is plumbing. So as we start to scale a market and get density in a market, we'll hire a plumber. So if there's any one single trade we get more of, it's plumbing issues. And then the last one is HVAC work. So that's kind of, that's a little more seasonal. And that's why you need more work or more houses to manage or more units to manage to get there. But when we get about 800 units in a market, we'll hire a full-time HVAC tech.
Makes a lot of sense.
How does someone know, let's say, you're a pilot, you're listening to this show and you own a rental property in X market. How do they go about sourcing the same fix, the same labor, the same, fixing the same tenant issues as you might fix? And how do they tell how those costs compare? Let me give you an example. I own let's say Joe Pilot, and they own a property in Chicago, and they manage it themselves, and they have an issue with, a refrigerator. How would they go about, finding the best possible price to get that thing fixed? And what's the difference between that and say working with a firm like yours?
Yeah, a refrigerator is interesting. I mean,
and maybe that's a bad example. Maybe
I think
snake a toilet.
There we go.
Snake a toilet. How about that? Snake a drain.
Yeah. So the difference is like if a pilot is managing by him or herself, then you're going to be basically getting one of those hopefully a year, right? Or every 2 or 3 years. You're going to be buying one of those a year. Well, somewhere in Evernest world right now, somebody is snaking a toilet, right?
Right.
We're just
20,000
we're
homes.
just doing it all the time. I don't know where one's going on, but I guarantee you one's going on right now.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's just like it makes sense, right? When you buy a service at scale, then you're going to get better deals. And so that's the way we think about actually our whole business. It's not just even the maintenance stuff. So perfect example would be brokerage. Like our brokerage business, we want to be able to help investors buy more houses. Obviously that helps us, but we also want to make sure that they're buying the right houses, right? We don't want to manage stuff that they shouldn't be buying. Another example of like buying at scale would be our insurance business. So when an investor goes and buys a house, he or she is insuring that one house, right? Well, we have 20,000 houses. And so we're working on a program right now where we secure essentially an umbrella policy or a master policy for all 20,000 doors. And when that investor comes on, now he or she can go to Allstate or State Farm and insure it themselves, but Allstate and State Farm is going to underwrite that as a one house deal. We underwrite it as, hey, we have 20,000 houses, and this one house is going to be just a piece of those 20,000 houses. So we think we're going to consistently get better deals for our owners. That's the kind of thing that we want to like continue to promote is how do you get to the point where it's just all the ancillary benefits of working with somebody like us makes dealing with us a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, think about just finding that. I mean, this is a really good point I want to stay on for just a second. Think about like you want to find a property manager, and it's like you can find the one random guy with a couple of people, and you're not going to get the scale that Matthew's talking about, right? Like you're not going to get the economies of scale, the plumbers and the HVAC people,
right,
and the insurance and all these things. So this is just something, it's like professionalizing the operations quite a bit. So
yeah, and when you get, everybody talks about when as an investor you have to have a Rolodex, you have to have a closing attorney and a broker, and all we're trying to do is make as many. We don't have an attorney that closes deals, but all we're trying to do is make it as one-stop shop as possible. And how can we bring all those service providers under one roof? And then when we think about a relationship with a client, we don't think, oh, I've got to maximize our property management fees to Jim or Joe or whatever. What we think is, hey, we want to create a holistic relationship where we're looking at, how much of the lifetime value with a relationship with this owner, how can we expand our services, make less on each one, but as a whole, make way more money. And it's a good deal for them.
Oh, there's an objection, really quick. There's an objection that I hear a lot of people say about property management companies, and I just want to hit the nail right on the head here, or however you say it. How do you align with your owner when you're usually taking a gross percentage of revenue and you're kind of in not a pure profit business, but, if my house fails, you're still collecting, the top line percentage, right? And I'm losing money, but you could still be making money. How do you really kind of overcome that with homeowners and that sort of mindset that people might have about property management?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say, look, I mean, we manage 20,000 houses. Like, if we were doing it wrong, word would get out pretty quickly, and we wouldn't be managing 20,000 doors. But the thing I would say is, let's just take resident underwriting as an example. The pain and the problems that if you rented to that 1 in 6 in Atlanta that's fraudulent, I mean, that's like Russian roulette, right, in Atlanta. What that would cost you would basically pay for me for 3 years. And so, and just like opportunity costs and, eviction costs and court costs and just brain damage. So, to some degree, we kind of protect homeowners from themselves, and that's what we get paid for. But what I really want, and, we're starting it with insurance and doing it with a couple of other products. What I really want is to say, hey, look, Ryan, if you just manage with me, it's almost like I work for free because all the benefits you get from all these other things, basically, our work orders, like our plumber is 15-20% cheaper. And if you add that up over the 3 years or 4 years that you're going to be with me,
right,
that's what that's going to be worth. And,
I love
the
that
insurance
answer.
thing.
Such a good, yeah. Such a good point. I mean, you're going to amortize cheaper. Yeah. It's great.
And what I'll say too is the small time property manager, if I'm being like intellectually honest, is actually pretty good at managing, right? Like he or she's been doing it a long time. You can get their cell phone. A few things are happening right now that I think are important. Number one is they can't provide a consistent product because they are the product. And there's just no way somebody can be on. I just got back from the Philippines 3 or 4 months ago, and I have a call center in the Philippines that is answering calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the property manager just can't do that. The thing that's like separated them from us until what I think is coming on in the next probably 12 months is they're just really good decision makers, right? Like, should I repair or replace this HVAC? Should I repair or replace this roof? They make good decisions because they have the mental model, the reps that they've gone through a bunch. But the cool thing now is we're starting to ingest enough data and have historical context of these homes and using AI models to predict what the right answer is. So when your Tait, when your roof goes out, we can basically predict, hey, it was put on 12 years ago. You live in, XYZ city. Maybe that's in the South where it gets to be 110 degrees. Maybe you live in Austin, Texas. It's 110, and roofs just don't last that long there. So our model tells you should replace the roof. That's where property management is going. And that will also allow us to predict future NOI, right? I ought to be able to go in and plug in, how old's the roof? How old's the HVAC? What type of refrigerator is it? When do they buy it? And then project out a consistent NOI for our clients.
It's funny. We talk a lot when we're talking about big syndicated deals. Ryan and I both buy commercial real estate all the time. Ryan, self-storage. We're in self-storage and multifamily and all these different assets. And we all the time will pitch to investors. We'll say, hey, this is great because there's upside because there's operational mismanagement. It's a mom and pop owner. This guy, the Houston portfolio, right? The guy lived in Colorado and is managing it from a spreadsheet. It's a 500,000 square foot portfolio. And so, of course, there's, 10 or 15% of NOI that's just being left on the table because it's not being institutionally optimized. Yet, at the same time, we all talk about, buying a rental property and it's like, we'll just manage it ourselves. So it's very funny to hear this, but I think this is a fun conversation because oftentimes, I'll be honest with you, I have not had a great experience with third-party property managers in physical real estate. Ryan's nodding his head.
Yeah.
So
that's a common story.
No, I have an evolving opinion of this, and I keep going, Tait. I do want to share it.
But I really love the storyline here because what we're arriving at is a way to institutionalize your physical real estate portfolio. If you have rentals, that you haven't pulled your hair out and fire sold yet, that there's a way to institutionalize things because, again, it's the same thing as we talk about in the commercial real estate space where it's like you can't compete with a big operator that has a call center and an on-site staff and in-house management and all of these advanced financial models to set pricing. You can't compete with that, right? As a mom and pop. And so that's why we're seeing consolidation in the industry. Well, it's the same thing in your physical rental portfolio. If you own, we just bought another triplex and we've been doing the management. We did the renovation. It's fun. I work with my wife on this and she does a lot of the heavy lifting, but we're not an institutional shop on a property management side. So it's cool to see this company that you've built kind of taking institutional style management down to the single family home space.
Yeah. And we think about that. Like, how can we give institutional level underwriting and institutional level, operations? Because we manage for institutions. Like, we manage for some of the biggest institutions out there. And just given your example, that triplex that you bought. I don't know where it is, but let's say Evernest had a house around the corner, or a triplex around the corner. I have a whole team of revenue management folks that are watching your house and optimizing at all times my house against your house. So our goal now, owner may say, I don't care, I'm not going to rent it for that. But I can go to my owner and say, hey, Tait's down the street is, $2,600 a month. If we want to be the next one that rents, let's put it at 25 or 2,400. Like, that type of conversation is going on internally here. And I have a whole team of people that are literally watching to see, like, how do we make our house the next one that rents?
Yeah, like, this is so critical because, I mean, like, when you think about, like, I used to not like self-storage, like third-party property management, right? Because my first thought was, why let them do it and pay them money, and I'm just going to do it myself, and I can do it better than anybody because I care about the property the most. That was my, like, immature 10-year ago opinion. If you saw me then, that's what I would say. Now I say exactly what you said, Matthew. When we pick CubeSmart or Extra Space or Public Storage to manage our property, we get exactly that benefit. When we go to a market like Houston, the deal that Tait and I just did, we picked CubeSmart. They're the most dominant, most prevalent property manager company for storage in the markets that the submarkets that we were in around Houston. When I went and did the deal, not only did they have more informed underwriting because they have stores already in that hyper market. They can say,
they're actually comps. That's the other thing. Like, it's not just Zillow would be my view.
Exactly.
It's like we have internal comps that says right down the street we rented this for X. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Now, and I like to give the analogy where it's like, some destinations you can't take Delta or Hawaiian or whatever. Some destinations you might only have like a Part 135 operator and a King Air 200 to get you there, right? So, or some kind of EAS service. That's exactly how my portfolio is set up. Some markets, it makes more sense for my brand to go in there and my property management team to take it. But some markets, they're big enough markets to where there's so much REIT, Public Storage, Extra Space, CubeSmart in that market. It makes more sense to give it to those more dominant operators. And it's like, okay, they can do what's best for the investment. And so I really will encourage people. I mean, this is a really good point. And they have this. We have the same thing now. We have a call center in Manila as well.
Right.
And we do a lot of the thing, revenue management and AI and all that. But imagine a publicly traded company. They're going to have a few bells and whistles as well.
Yeah.
So I really like this guy. I like where this is going. This is a good reminder. Yeah.
Can I tell you, like, where this is headed? In, I would say, 3 to 5 years, we will be proactively managing the home and managing the work orders versus reactive. So right now, if an HVAC breaks, I've got to get a call. You can just imagine in 3 to 5 years from now, we'll have a sensor on the HVAC that says, hey, something's not right at 123 Main Street. We should send somebody out there right now. And so, like, we will literally be monitoring these houses on a proactive basis to make sure that, and it's always cheaper to fix it proactively. It always seems like air conditioners go out late on a Friday or on July 4th. And so, like, it's just a cheaper way to proactively manage.
I love this, how it ties to the story of aviation, because in aviation, the only way we learned in the past was accidents. They always say, aviation regulations are written in blood. So we were reacting, an accident would happen, we'd react to it and we'd change rules. Now we have so much data on the airplane that's streaming off through a FOQA program where we can kind of see the trends in the industry and get ahead of it in training and memos and things like that to actually get better, which is why the industry is so safe. And it's cool that, like, these things are kind of bleeding into real estate, especially with the advent of AI. Now you don't need you don't need as many people or as many, butts and seats monitoring everybody's HVAC system. It's like all this stuff is just hyper automated, and that's really incredible. Pretty exciting.
This also, for me, brings the whole idea of roll-ups down to, it's giving me a different context on roll-ups, because what I mean by roll-up is there's, let's say HVAC companies, right? And this is a big trend in buying businesses today, is you can buy 10 different HVAC businesses and roll them up into one, and you're going to get a better multiple for that business. You can sell it off at a higher valuation because now you've got all this economies of scale. And that's all well and good as an investor, as somebody that wants to buy businesses and build businesses. But from a consumer standpoint, I don't know if I really ever thought about it that it's saving the end consumer money, because you had these 10 fragmented businesses before that had to charge 3x what they were paying their W-2 employees to cover their overhead and their profit. Well, now the overhead of all those companies is combined, and it becomes a more streamlined operation. I think this is the same reason why airlines have consolidated, and every industry has seen consolidation. It's kind of cool to see how this can actually benefit the end user as a real estate investor.
Yeah, as we scale up and our gross, like we start to get economies of scale, you can just imagine we're going to compress prices in the industry next, right?
Right.
There will be some time that we'll compete on price because we're the same, or excuse me, we won't compete on price because we're the same price with the mom and pop. But at some point, we get so many economies of scale, and each incremental door is worth so much to us that we'll be able to consistently undercut the mom and pop shops.
I want to talk about all the different segments of property management and all of the technicalities that come along with it. So let's start with leasing. Talk to us about one, what goes into just listing your property online and getting tenant applications, both from a actual doing the work, putting that, writing the description, getting it online and all that sort of stuff, as well as a legal perspective of making sure that you're not playing favorites or leaning one way on one application versus another.
Yeah, just from a technical standpoint, I don't know if this is true in all states. I think it is. If you own less than 4 units, you don't have to worry about fair housing laws.
Okay.
I should don't take that as a blanket statement. Double check your state, but federal fair housing laws, as long as you own less, you don't have to worry about it. And you should triple check the rules, but that's generally the guidelines. But yeah, Zillow basically has a corner on this market. Zillow has probably the top 80% of the performing sites that residents go to. Probably 10 to 15% of the residents go to our website, but the majority of them go and basically look at what all is available on a Zillow or a Duryea or HotPads. That's part of all the family of Zillow. And then you can just imagine it's a sales funnel, right? Like the more leads you can fit in the top, you're going to have a much better chance at finding somebody down at the bottom. So our resident services or resident prospect services, we have about 25 people that are communicating full time right now. We're actually using some AI right now. We've got human in the loop on all the AI. So a text message comes in, it's generating a response. Do you want to send this back? And it's like, yes, or fix it or whatever. But this quarter, we're actually going to take the human out of the loop. So we'll be able to consistently communicate with residents. And we're talking about like tens of thousands of text messages a week. Call it 40, 50,000 text messages a month. We also get about 40,000 phone calls a month to our call center. 70% of those are residents looking to rent a home. So just the sheer volume of communication, even if you're just one home, you can just imagine you may have to have 10 or 20 phone calls to meet, 3 or 4 residents at the home and the sad thing about those phone calls is it is the exact same phone call 20 times. How much is it? What are your qualifications? It's like the most frustrating thing ever. But, we have actually self-showing lockboxes in most of our markets where a resident can use their ID and a credit card and get into the home. They can view it at their own leisure. And then we have basically we have a partner that underwrites. We use their underwriting software, but we also have an underwriting department here. So we just have a machine that's constantly, taking this funnel and moving people down through the funnel.
Well, I'm ready to sign up. I don't even have a single family home, and I'm excited. This is
it's pretty cool.
Honestly, when we started the show, I was like, I wasn't really quite sure where it would go, but I mean, this is kind of showing how just efficient AI is going to make this world.
Yeah.
You can handle more volume, more people. It allows you to operate at a lower expense ratio. Those savings will trickle down to the landlord. I mean, this to the owner of the home. It's just incredible.
It's an exciting time for sure, Ryan. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. With the AI is going to change so many things. One thing Jeff Bezos has this quote that I'm always telling my team. It's like, Jeff says, everybody comes to me and says, what's going to change over the next 10 years? And he said, that's the wrong question. He's saying,
what's not
he says,
change?
The right question, what's not going to change over the next 10 years? And that's the great thing about real estate, owning real estate. Like, if you sit close to something, it's really hard for AI to disrupt you if you own an asset that's paying you cash. And for the next 10 years, people are going to need places to live. And
probably beyond that.
Yeah. And so, the point is, like, I really feel good about the industries that we're all in. And, I think AI and technology is going to do nothing but make it better for all of us.
Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah. And I know you have a podcast, but how do listeners get in touch with you about property management potentially? How do they learn more about your company?
I mean, the easiest way is just to go on our website, evernest.co. That's .co. I said we're in 50 different markets. We may not be in your market, but happy to have the conversation anyways. We have a team of people that are state specific that are having conversations with homeowners. If you haven't bought a rental property and you say, hey, I want to buy a small apartment building or a single family home, we have a team of people that does that as well. And if you just want to have the conversation, like, we have a bunch of tire kickers. The thing that we want to do is just educate, similar to you guys. Like, we just want to be a resource. We want to be able to kind of like educate people and make sure they don't make mistakes. We'll tell you the truth. We call it the uncomfortable transparency around here. We're going to tell you the truth. We'll tell you whether to buy a house or not buy a house. Just want to, especially as people are getting started, make it as seamless as possible.
That's excellent. We'll link to that in the show notes. Very, very interesting company. Thank you, Matthew, for coming on and sharing. This is great.
Guys, I appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Matthew. And for those that are tuning in, if you wouldn't mind, leave us a review. We love reviews, especially good ones. And otherwise, we'll catch you on the next episode.